You don't want to hear my stories. Here we go. Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe lemar. Hashem says to Moshe, Daber el Aaron v'amarta elo. Say to Aaron and tell him, Ba'alos chas haneros. When you light the menorah, the candle should face the middle. So there's a famous Rashi. Rashi wants to know, why are we talking about the menorah this week? It has no connection to anything. So Rashi says that Aharon and Shevet Levi were depressed. They felt bad. Last week, all 12 Shvatim brought gifts to the Beis HaMikdash, to the Mishkan. The Mishkan was being dedicated, and then Shevet Yehuda brought, and Ephraim, and Menashe, and Yisachar, and Zvulun, and Dan, and Naphtali. They all brought gifts. And Aaron said, you know, nobody from my Shevet, Shevet Levi, did not bring one gift to the Beis HaMikdash. They didn't bring plates or bowls or wagons or oxen like everybody else brought the same gift. 12 days, 12 gifts, Shevet Levi, nothing. So he felt bad. Aaron felt bad. That's what Rashi says. Kol Shadaito. He felt bad. He wasn't there. He didn't participate in the Chanukah, the dedication of the Mishkan. Not him and not his Shevet. So Hashem said to him, don't feel bad. Yours is greater than theirs. Why? Because their gift is for today. One day they brought a gift. After that, in a year from now, no one will remember the gift. That's not true. We read it every year. But you light the menorah. Every day you light the menorah. What a wonderful gift. Yes.
If it's 12 Shefatim, so there is also Shefatim. So there is 13 Shefatim.
Yeah, well, you see, Yosef sometimes is 2.
Yeah.
So if Yosef is 2 and you add Levi, it's 13. Okay?
Special.
Yeah, it comes out that way sometimes. Sometimes it's 12, sometimes it's 13. Think of it like boys and girls. Girls bas mitzvah at 12, boys are at 13.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Okay. Of course, it raises a very simple question. Raises a very simple question. Aaron, you feel bad? What's the problem? Go bring a gift. Someone says to you, you weren't at my birthday party. You say, do you feel bad? What's the problem? You can bring me a gift today. I'll take the gift. That means Aaron had 12 days. So he wasn't the first one. He wasn't on day 1 or day 2 or day 3. But by day 13, he could have put together a gift. Why didn't he do it? What are you so upset about? I didn't buy you a birthday card. So go buy a birthday card. You'll be late. So it'll be late. It's not the end of the world. So they asked that question. So Rav Zilberstein had an interesting answer. Rav Zilberstein said that how did every Shevet know which day was theirs and what to bring? They all brought the same thing. He says they had a nevuah. The Nasi, the head of the Shevet, at night went to sleep and had a nevuah a month ago. In 3 weeks, we're going to dedicate the Mishkan. You're day 4. You're day 5. This is what you bring. They had a nevuah. Aaron went to bed every night, got up the next day, had no nevuah. So Aaron felt bad. Not that the gifts were something that anybody could bring. You could only bring it if Hashem sent you a message. Today's your day, bring it. We were left out. Why were we left out? That's what upset him. And your mind begins to wonder, maybe I was left out because of the Chet HaEgel. Maybe I was like, you begin your mind plays tricks on you. Begins to make things, right, makes all these, cheshbonot, as you say. That's what Rabbi Zilberstein answers. The truth is, there's even a very simpler answer. What happened on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, the first day when the Mishkan was open for business? Nadav and Avihu died. Okay? Now, they couldn't sit Shiva. A Kohen was forbidden at that time to sit Shiva. But they were Avelut. For a child, how long is your Avelut? 30 days. Is an Ovel allowed to give gifts or get gifts? No. Not at all. And the whole Shevet felt, in mourning. So it wasn't that Aaron didn't want to do it. It was inappropriate. How could you bring gifts and celebrate? You just buried 2 children. That means Aaron felt bad that the timing was just so poor. That his children died, 2 children died. The whole Shevet just wasn't in the mood to give it. And therefore he didn't. It makes sense. Okay. So Rashi says, Hashem said to Aaron, don't worry though, what you do is greater than everybody else. Why? Because the truth is, anybody could light the menorah. You didn't have to be a Kohen to light the menorah. The menorah, the Kohen prepared the menorah, but even a Levi or a non-Kohen could light the menorah. But for 40 years, who lit the menorah every single day? Aaron HaKohen. Aaron did it himself. He didn't let anybody else. So Hashem said, you're going to give a gift of 40 years. Of course, the understanding is that Hashem doesn't need the light. So the lighting of the menorah was not that you need light in the Beis HaMikdash. You didn't need the light. It was a way of payback. Hashem had a cloud that led you during the night, so now you have a light to say to Hashem, thank you very much. Called Hakarat HaTov, that's the best gift of all. The Ramban doesn't like that. The Ramban says that's the whole thing, the lighting of the menorah. He brought korbanot, he brought ketores, there are a lot of things Aaron did. There were only 3 Kohanim, 4. You had Aaron, you had Elazar, Isamar, and Pinchas. So you only have 4 Kohanim, and they had to service 3 million Jews. So they were busy. Korbanot, shchita, collecting the blood, sprinkling the blood. The menorah was the smallest. The lechem aponim, 12 loaves of bread every week. That took a lot of effort. So the Ramban says that the menorah that Rashi or the Torah is talking about, that your gift has nothing to do with the menorah and the Mishkan. It has to do with the Hanukkah menorah. He says there's going to come a time when the Beis HaMikdash is going to be shut down. All the oil is going to be tamei. All the things are tamei. Nobody can work in the Beis HaMikdash during the Greek occupation. Then your family, the Chashmonaim, who are Kohanim, are going to come in and they're going to clean the place up and you're going to have a new dedication. Chanukah means to rededicate. And you're going to do everything, clean up, the whole Beis HaMikdash is going to be reestablished because of your effort. Nobody else is going to bring any gifts. You're going to be the only one bringing gifts. And that menorah is going to be beloved in every home till the end of time. That means Hanukkah happened 2,000 years ago. Yet Hanukkah, even Solomon Schechter, they like Hanukkah menorahs. Even in public school, they light Hanukkah menorahs. Even the White House lights a Hanukkah menorah. So go figure.
Solomon Schechter sounds so Litvish.
Yes, I know it does. No different than Sor Schneer or whatever it is, or Esther Schoenfeld, something like that. I know an attorney named Esther Schoenfeld. She has a great name. Esther Schoenfeld was a big movement.
Rabbi Bryks?
Yes.
What gifts did they bring?
What gifts did who bring?
The Kohen.
In the time of Hanukkah?
Yeah.
They cleaned up the whole Beis HaMikdash. They reestablished it. They had the menorah put. The menorah was broken down. They replaced the menorah. They brought the oil. They made the oil for the menorah. Everything the Beis HaMikdash that needed to be done, the Kohanim did. They had families that did it for them, that they knew what they were doing, but they did everything that had to be done.
That was the gifts.
That was the gifts that would last, and would last a lifetime. Because it would last for thousands of years. So that's really what it talks about, where it says that Aaron felt bad, but it really wasn't as if he felt so bad. He felt a little bit bad, but not that much. Okay, next. There's so many different little sections over here. It says that then Hashem said, Ve'etnas haLevim, I'm going to give the Levim to the control of Aaron, mitoch b'nei Yisrael. That means Shevet Levi came from amongst the Jewish people, and their job was to service the Beis HaMikdash. Okay? So it's just very, very interesting. I don't know if I've ever showed this to you. Let me see if I can take a piece of paper and show it to you. It says that you take the Levim from amongst B'nai Yisrael. You have a pen? I lost my pen. So I'm going to have to borrow a pen tonight. There you go. Okay, here we go. Okay? Take the word Yisrael, right? L'toch B'nai Yisrael. Here's the word Yisrael, right? That's how you spell Yisrael in Hebrew. Let's spell it out. This is a Yud. This This is a shin, this is a resh, this is an aleph, this is a lamed. If you take the middle letters of it, it spells Levium. So you take the Jewish people from amongst Bnei Yisrael, from amongst Yisrael, you have the word Levium. So it's very, very interesting. Now, at what age, thank you, did the Levi start working? At age 30. From 30 to 50. By the way, that was only in the Mishkan. Once the Beis HaMikdash came, there was no retirement age. They could work at 60, 70, 80. Bless you. It was only in the Beis HaMikdash, was 30 to 50. What about the Kohanim? They started when they were bar mitzvah, and there was no retirement age. Again, there were only 4 Kohanim. They didn't have the luxury to have a retirement age. There were no Kohanim left. So the Levi had 30 to 50. When did they start training? At age 25. 5 years training. Now, why did they start training at age 25? Why didn't they start training at age 30? The answer is very simple. If you're only working for 20 years, you want to be able to start working on day 1. That means when the Levi turned 30 and reported officially to the Beis HaMikdash, he didn't want to go for another 5 years of training. He wanted to make sure that he could maximize those 20 years, from 30 to 50. Those were the only years he was working. So he made sure from day 1 he was already fully trained. Okay, so that's why they allowed 25-year-olds to start training. But other than that, it really was unusual. It was really unusual because once the Beis HaMikdash came, that didn't happen. They worked, they didn't have any retirement ages whatsoever. You have, for example, they started early and they just went going without any problem. Okay? Then comes the next thing. Then you have, for example, Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe b'Midbar Sinai. It talks about the Korban Pesach. Right? That's one of the next parshas, one of the next things in there.
Pesach Sheni.
Pesach Sheni. Well, we didn't know about Pesach Sheni yet, right? We didn't know. Now we have Pesach. It comes the 14th of Nisan, and they're bringing the Korban Pesach. The only time they brought the Korban Pesach in the desert. The only time. They left Mitzrayim the first year. Why did they bring the Korban Pesach year 2? Because the whole purpose of the Korban Pesach was that they were going out of Egypt into Israel. The minute it became clear in year 2 that the generation in the desert was going to die in the desert, there was no more Korban Pesach. They had nothing to bring a Korban Pesach for. They would never leave Egypt.
So there's no way, so they don't need the second Pesach.
1 second. They didn't need a Pesach in year 2, year 3, year 4.
Right. Pesach Sheni,
We'll talk about Pesach Sheni in a moment. But other than Moshe bringing the one Korban Pesach with him in the desert, the next person who would bring the Korban Pesach with them was Yehoshua. Of course, Yehoshua had a problem. Because when did Yehoshua, let's figure out the timetable. Moshe Rabbeinu died on the 7th day of Adar. They sat there and mourned him for 30 days. So then Yehoshua took officially over to lead the people on the 7th day of Nisan. Right. Now they're crossing the Jordan into Israel. On the 10th day of Nisan they crossed. Now they're in Gilgal. They have 4 days till Pesach. They just got into Israel. 4 days till Pesach. Yeshua says, you know what? Now that we're all in Israel, let's bring the Korban Pesach. One problem. In order to bring the Korban Pesach, you have to have a Brit Milah. In the 40 years they were in the desert, nobody did Brit Milah except for Shevet Levi. So Yeshua had to organize a massive Brit Milah. All the children from age 0 to 40, born in the desert, that didn't have Brit Milah, they had to do Brit Milah.
So the question is, how would they eat man and learn Torah?
How could they what?
Eat man and learn Torah.
So the answer is because the Brit Milah was stopped because it was dangerous.
There was no north wind.
There was no north wind. So since it was considered a sakana, they were considered an ones. An ones is not held against them.
So the owners can eat man, and if his
That's
owners
correct.
can learn
The
Torah.
owners could eat man and they could learn Torah and everything else. They were considered an ones. But now Yoshua had to scramble. Because remember, you did the Brit Milah. Most times it takes about 3 days to recover from the Brit Milah. So even if you did the Brit Milah on Yud Aleph, by Yud Daled, they were just getting out of the agony. Now they have to go sit at the Seder table for 3 hours and eat the Korban Pesach. And they have to bring all the Korban Pesach. So they needed the good thing for the Levi, they needed the mechanism to bring the Korban Pesach.
So during the menorah on the 15th day of the Pesach, Nisan, so it says Va'arel lo yuchal.
That's right.
So they were all arelim,
No.
most of them,
When?
in Bamidbar.
Here?
In Bamidbar, in 40 years, those people.
They couldn't eat. So therefore Yoshua did Brit Milah.
So they didn't eat in 40 years the Korban Pesach?
That's right.
They have not ate it.
That means other than Moshe Rabbeinu bringing it the first year, from year 2 to year 40, there was no Korban Pesach. Pretty shocking, right? Pretty shocking. Now comes the Korban Pesach. It's the only one they're going to bring. You have a group of people who come to Moshe saying, no fair. What's wrong? We were Tameh, so we couldn't participate. Okay, it happens. Someone's in the hospital, they don't hear shofar. And if they're not near a sukkah, so they don't sit in the sukkah. It happens. We don't say, let's have 2 sukkahs, two shavuos. As you know, what made it so different? So part of the answer is that the Korban Pesach was what identified them as Jews. That means it was not just any Korban. When a person is Megayer, they're not fully converted until they become Korban Pesach. A Korban Pesach was more than just a normal Korban. It showed a love of Hashem. Then they asked, who were these people who were Tameh? A lot of different answers. One answer is it was the people who carried the Ark of Yosef. Or, for that matter, all the Shvatim had. If Reuven came out, Shimon, whoever carried it. So there was a whole group of people. Even though they weren't traveling, so they could have made themselves to harm, maybe they didn't. Another person says it was a mace mitzvah. Somebody had died in the desert. Hard to understand because nobody died in the desert. None of the women died. And only the few people that we know died. Most people didn't die in the desert. They were kosher 18. Well, they put that to death, the guy who cursed. But you see, since you know who was killed, the assumption is everybody else didn't die. Nobody died in the desert. Nadav and Avihu.
And Aaron Yosef.
Right. So now, some people say the most common answer is the relatives who buried Nadav and Avihu. The problem is Nadav and Avihu were buried on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So they could have been Tohar 7 days later. Why did they? There's 14 days later, and they come in and say, no, we're Tameh. Why are you Tameh 14 days later? Doesn't make sense. So I once told you,
Aaron Yosef.
right, well, I once told you that Moshe told them to take Nadav and Avihu to a special place called Hor HaHor. That means Nadav and Avihu were buried where in 40 years later, Aaron would be buried. Aaron was buried next to Nadav and Avihu. I found a medrash like that. It took 7 days to get there. They buried Nadav and Avihu, and it came 7 days back. So how long were they out? 14 days. So they came, Erev Pesach, saying we're Tameh.
On the mountain.
What?
They were buried on the mountain.
They were buried on what was called Hor HaHor, a mountain overlooking the entrance to Israel, where Aaron, in 40 years later, was going to be buried.
We know that place today?
Sure, Jordan has a place where they have a little hut, or they have a building on, which they claim is the burial place of Aaron HaKohen, near Petra. If you take a tour to Petra, you can also include Mount Nebo, where they say Moshe is buried, although they don't know exactly where. They have a marker where they think it is, and they have a place where they say is Aaron. I have a picture of it. Rav Kaduri, I know, went there, but he was a guest of the King of Jordan, so King of Jordan took him there.
It belongs to Israel?
No, Jordan.
But you can go there?
You can go there. They like tourists. Tourists spend money. I was going to go there on a day trip, but the day trip doesn't cover that area. You have to go for a 2-day trip. I only go for a week when I go there. It's true, I wasn't interested in going 2 days there. My wife for sure is not interested in going there, so it wasn't we'll have to see what happens. Now, comes the next question, which is an obvious question, and that is as follows. How we doing? We're great. That clock, we're really in good shape. We could be here for another 8 hours.
Like Israel.
Israeli time. The question is, if, let's say, they brought the Korban Pesach, Yud Daled, Erev Pesach. If you had to choose a day for Pesach Sheni, let's say someone was Tamei on the 14th. How many days did he need to become clean? 7. So make Pesach Sheni Chof Aleph, the 21st day. That would have been the last day of Pesach. Would have been perfect. The last day of Pesach is a Chag, right? The 7th day, Kriyat Yamsuf. That means once I need, if Pesach is the Korban Pesach is today, and I need a backup, why would I make the backup the 14th day of Iyar, which has nothing to do with Pesach, other than it falls out in Sfirat Omer? Why not make the backup 7 days later when it's still Pesach? My house is still kosher for Pesach, I have matzah on the table, then I could say, okay, we'll bring the Korban Pesach, I have the matzah there, there's no chametz around. When they brought the Korban Pesach on the 14th day of Iyar, there was chametz everywhere. Your house wasn't clean, it was a bizarre time. What made the 14th day of Iyar, a month later, the date special for Pesach Sheni, when it had nothing to do with Pesach?
Nothing matters other than others.
Well, no one is embarrassed. You're a tamei, you're a osek b'mitzvah, poter min ha-mitzvah. That means someone in your family passed away and you have to go through the burial. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. So the question is why? Why create a month? So the answer is a fascinating answer. You have to know the calendar. When, for example, in January, you look up at the calendar and you ask someone, when is Korban Pesach Day? Yud Daled Nisan, correct? What will be the backup date for that? That means you assume the 14th day of Nisan and you circle it. And you tell your family, we're going to all go to Jerusalem and we're going to bring the Korban Pesach on Yud Daled Nisan. But you always have to keep in mind that the Sanhedrin could do what before that date? They could make a leap year, right? Mm-hmm. If they make a leap year, that Yud Daled Nisan now becomes when? Yud Daled Iyar.
Yeah.
Push away.
Push away a whole month, right? Mm-hmm. So every single year, Yud Daled Iyar is always the backup for Yud Daled Nisan. That's why it's Pesach Sheni.
No.
It's a fascinating answer.
Every 3 years, huh?
Well, we have a calendar, so it's every 3 years. But in the olden days, they didn't go by calendar. The Sanhedrin would make an evaluation. The weather's not good, it's too cold, let's push the calendar off. They could have a leap year 1 year after the other. They were in control of the leap years. It's not like we have today a calendar. So if I was planning in January with my family to go for Pesach to Jerusalem, I would have to make sure that I planned 2 trips, either the 14th of Nisan or the backup plan, the 14th of Iyar. The 14th of Iyar was always the backup plan. I had to wait to get the newspaper to see if the Sanhedrin decided to make a leap year. So it's a fascinating thing that that the 14th day of Nisan was always the backup, was the 14th day of Iyar, not the 7th. That's why it is what it is. Okay.
The Sefer Chanuk.
Right.
They say about they know about the leap year. They know about when you put the seed in the ground. If you see it not ready, they already know from that is leap year.
They have different ways of knowing. But of course, it all depended on the weather, it all depended on a lot of factors. Okay, next. Vayidaber Hashem and Moshe Lemor. Hashem said to Moshe, make 2 trumpets out of silver. And you would blow the trumpets, and that's how you would gather the people or whatever it was. The trumpets of Moshe, when Moshe died, who took over those trumpets? Yoshua. The answer is nobody.
Did Moshe Rabbeinu blew the shofar himself?
Moshe Rabbeinu blew the shofar himself.
Right.
It was seen that Moshe Rabbeinu himself blew it, and he could call people together, depends if he blew one or two, whatever it is. He was in control. Every leader had their own set of trumpets. Yoshua could not blow Moshe's trumpets, and whoever took over from Yoshua could not blow Yoshua's trumpets. Almost as if the people could hear the sound of the trumpet and they knew who was calling them. That's Moshe Rabbeinu calling. Or that's Yoshua's call.
Trumpet means shofar.
The shofar. It was like a trumpet and a shofar. It was made out of silver. But it's fascinating. It's fascinating that it wasn't as if whoever the leader was blew the same shofar, the same trumpet. Every leader, when he became the king, the leader, they had to make for him a brand new set. Every trumpet had its own unique sound.
So were the Jews the first ones to blow the trumpet in the camp?
Yes, they were. That's how they would assemble. That's how they would send messages.
In history, saying the Jews were the
Correct.
first trumpet players.
Where you could say that the Levim had their own trumpets. You know. Now, what's fascinating is a lesson. Why? What's the lesson? That Moshe's style of leadership was just that, Moshe's style of leadership. When Moshe died, Yoshua took over. Yoshua had his own style of leadership. When Yoshua died, the next person took over. You could never say to Yehoshua, I don't get you. That's not the way Moshe would have done it. Because we always say, Shmuel b'daro k'yitach b'daro. That means you can't go to the Kohanim of a previous generation. You can only go to the people you have today. I mentioned at the beginning of this year that I was speaking to a teacher, and I was talking about this, and he said to me that what he does in education today, 5 years ago he didn't do. He says, today, education is so different that I can't even say to you what I did 5 years ago is the same as it is today. Because when a parent comes in to a teacher and says, in my day we didn't do this, the teacher laughs at you and says to you, in your day? You know what schools were like in your day? Totally different than they are today. Now we have to deal with smart boards, now we have to deal with electronics, now we have to deal with the social media, now the challenges of the kids are totally different.
Internet control.
It's different. You can't come to me and say, well, in my day, my principal would act this way. Some things, yes. But the educational system is totally different. What we expect kids to know today is totally different than what has been in the past. It's not the same. It is dramatically different. So it's interesting that we see that already in the Torah, that Yoshua had his style. And Moshe said to Yeshua when he took over, Chazak ve'motz, be strong. You're the leader. Do it your way. Follow what the Sanhedrin says, but do it your way. You don't have to copy me. It's not about copying me. We know that Moshe tries to get Yisro to come with him, right? He says to Yisro, we need you. You're going to be our eyes. You're going to be able to guide us through this desert. You know all the tribes, you know all the people here, we could use you. A little bit strange because they had a cloud guiding them, so they had their own GPS, they weren't going to get lost. And Hashem guided them, and the Sanhedrin guided them. So what was it that Yisro was going to offer? Maybe Moshe was just saying that to Yisro, that Yisro should feel very important. But I saw over here one of the Meforshim say, very interesting, he says, Jews in general look at the leadership and says, you know why they're leaders? They were born to special families, their fathers were holy people, it's natural that they're leaders. Yisro, they had none of that. Yisro had none of that. Yisro came from a non-Jewish family, he was a priest. Yisro went from the bottom all the way to the top on his own. So Moshe says to Yisro, I want you to come with us. You know why? You're a good example. You show that anybody can succeed.
Self-made man.
Right? Self-made. He's a self-made man.
Ayulanu le'edut.
Right. You can show that anybody can succeed. Moshe wanted to parade Yisro around so the kids should see, look what you could accomplish. Anybody can accomplish. Who cares where you were raised? Who cares about your background? Who cares who your father and mother is? It makes no difference. You can do it. That's what he wanted to. Okay. Anyway, we get a little bit further. We have the nuns, the inverted nuns, as if it breaks up the the book, that the book of Bamidbar is 3 different books, the prior to the Nuns, and the book after. So there's 7 Sifrei Torah, they're not 5 Sifrei Torah, different Meforshim. But then it says, Vayhi om ki misonim ra b'oznei Hashem. The people were complainers. What were they complaining about? They wanted meat. They didn't like the man anymore, even though the man could taste for whatever you like, but it all looked the same. They just wanted things different. They wanted meat. Although they had plenty of animals, they could have slaughtered any of their animals, and they could have had steak and ribeye and hamburger meat. They could have whatever they wanted. But that wasn't going to make them happy, because then they would lose the animal. So they wanted free meat. That's right. They wanted it free. Rechinam. So Moshe says to Hashem. Ha'anochi horesi es kol ha'om hazeh. Was I pregnant with all these people? Im anochi leditu, did I give birth to them? Ki somer elai, that you, Hashem, say to me, Se'eyo bechekecha, hold the baby up in your arms. Kasher yisa ha'omen es hayonet, like a mother carries her nursing child. Where am I going to get meat for them? So the Sforno gives a fascinating observation. The Sforno says, had Moshe looked at himself like the mother of the Jewish people, then he would have gotten them meat. Why? Because a mother will do whatever the child needs to better the child. I mean, Moshe said to Hashem, I'm not their mother. Sforno says that's a shame. Because if you believed you were their mother, we wouldn't be having this conversation. You'd be out right now getting them the meat. You'd be in the store shopping. You'd find them the answer. He says, because a mother never knows the word no. If the child needs something, the mother will do whatever is necessary to get that done. Right? If the child needs it. And the Sforno says, why is that? Because the children believe that the parent truly loves them. The children trust their parents. Moshe did not believe Bnei Israel loved him. Moshe did not believe they trusted him. They were always criticizing him. If Moshe came early, he must have had a fight with his wife. So he came early. If Moshe came late, they must be making up. No matter what happened, Moshe says, no matter what happens, they always find the negative. It's like the New York Times and Trump. No matter what Trump does, the New York Times says it's no good. No matter what the Jews do in Israel, the New York Times says it's no good.
Man tastes meat, yeah?
The man tasted like whatever you wanted it to taste.
Milk and meat and...
It could taste like lasagna.
Yeah.
It could taste like fluff. It could be whatever you wanted it.
So it's the nature of the person to complain.
You're right. The difference is as follows. It's the nature of a person to complain. Do you, by nature, complain about mom and dad? No. Why not? Because they love you. You trust them. It's a relationship. They raised you. Moshe did not see himself. The way Moshe is talking is, he says, I didn't give birth to these people. They're not mine. That's true. But that was the beginning of the end. That's why they needed the Zakanim, that's why the Sanhedrin, that's where the transition from Moshe's time was going on. I'll give you an example. They say...
That's the tribe should give the advice how to make a court system, right?
Right. A little bit, some of the advice. That's where Yisro came in back then. Give you an example. A teacher that the kids love doesn't have discipline problems. Right? I mean, when you went through school, the teachers you didn't like, those were the teachers you gave the hardest time to. But if the kids like the teacher... Right, but if the kids like the teacher,
Yes.
the kids will perform. Okay? And I used to say it all the time. I had teachers that had PhDs, couldn't teach a word. I had teachers that barely graduated high school, they were great teachers. Because the kids liked them. And if the kids like them, they will learn. They bring down a story, a very interesting story, that there was a teacher who the kids were starting to misbehave. He says, okay, I'm going to write your name on the blackboard. If you get a check mark or 2 check marks, I'm going to send you to the principal. So the names are on the blackboard of the kids that are misbehaving. All of a sudden the principal walks in. Now, if the principal sees the name on the blackboard, he's gonna know that these kids are misbehaving. What does the teacher do? He stands by the blackboard and he starts going back and forth like this with his suit. He was erasing the names from the blackboard. So now, when he moved,
Teacher?
the teacher, so his whole back of his suit was white because he was erasing the name. That was before smart boards. And the principal never saw the names on the blackboard.
At that time was a smart teacher, that's
Right.
right. Yeah,
So
smart.
the kids knew, this teacher, he loves us. Because the names were on the blackboard would have gotten in trouble by the principal, and the teacher stood up, and without erasing the names, just by moving back and forth with his back, he erased all the names. So the kids knew, this teacher really likes us. That means this teacher is not in it for the paycheck. He's in it because he cares. The class was different. After that, he never had any problem with the class. After that, he understood. The kids had a relationship. So that's what it is. You know, that's what the Sifurno is trying to say. Moshe believed that Klal Yisrael didn't like him, didn't want him, didn't want to have anything to do with him. And therefore, he didn't have that relationship with them. When that relationship started to diminish, okay, that's what it was.
Yeah, but mainly the brothers were coming out from Egypt, they were complaining most of the.
And Moshe was the one who took the Erev Rav out, unfortunately, and yet they were the ones that complained the hardest. Okay. So Moshe has to choose 70 people. He actually chose 72, 6 from every Shevet. Therefore, 2 were left behind. The 2 that were left behind were brothers. Eldad and Medad, Moshe Rabbeinu's half-brothers. And, you know, there's a whole question how they were half-brothers. It's very complicated. Different midrashim about that. But Eldad and Medad remained behind. They got the nevuah, and they started to publicly tell everybody their nevuah. What was the nevuah that Eldad and Medad said? So the Gemara has 3 different opinions. It's the Gemara in Sanhedrin. The most common opinion is that Moshe mace v'Yeshua machnis la'aretz. The most common opinion is that Eldad and Medad said Moshe Rabbeinu is going to die in the desert, and Yeshua is going to take him into Israel. Was that nevuah true? Yes.
Yeah.
It wasn't true today. It was going to be true in 40 years from now. Had they not sinned by the spies, had they gone into Israel right away, would Moshe have died at age 80 versus age 120? Don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. We don't know. Remember, not without realizing it, Moshe wasn't the only one who was going to die. Miriam and Aaron also died. All died 40 years later. None of them made it into Israel. You know, so it's just interesting that was their nevuah. The second opinion is Abba Chonin Omer Mishum Abba Eliezer Al Iske Slav Heimistafim. They said Hashem is going to send you food. He's going to send you meat, but you're going to devour it like cannibals. And while the meat is still in your teeth, there's going to be a magefa, and thousands are going to die. And that's what happened. That means when Klal Yisrael refused to acknowledge the beauty of the man, and they had total disrespect, so then Eldad and Medad said, you're making a big mistake. The third opinion, Rav Nachman Omer, you know what they were prophesizing about? Al Iske Gog Umogog. They weren't talking about anything happening today. They were talking about Mashiach. They went into Nevuah about what's going to happen in the Yemos HaMashiach. And for the people of the desert, that must have been a very shocking experience. To hear Nevuah of what's going to happen in the end of time, which could have been thousands of years later. You know, we live in a world of science fiction, and we talk about time travel and all these things. I don't think 2,000 or 3,000 years ago in the desert, they had such concepts like we have. They didn't have television and movies and all these things and to have that. So, you know, it's just very, very interesting about what happened. Now, it goes even further. When Eldad and Medad had their nevuah, right? When Eldon and Medad said their nevuah, who heard? Who was there in the neighborhood who heard Eldon and Medad? So the answer was Tzipporah, Moshe's wife. So what did Tzipporah do? She turns to Miriam, and she says to Miriam, "Oh, I feel bad for these women." So Miriam says, "Why?" Well, I'm married, Aaron is married, Moshe is married to you. What do you feel bad for Eldon and Medad's wives? He says, well, if they are anything like Moshe, they're going to be very lonely. Because Moshe is so involved with Hashem, he has no time for me. Of course, Miriam heard that, and she went straight to Aaron. And she says, we got to talk, brother. We got to talk about Moshe. And that created a ruckus, right? We know what happened after that. Now, it's very interesting. The Moshe Zekeni Mibali HaTosfos, he has something completely different. He says that Miriam said to Aaron, it's time we got Moshe a different wife. Aaron said, why? Moshe and Zipporah seemed happy. Miriam said, and this is the Moshe Zekeni, he says, Zipporah was a good wife for a Moshe who was a nobody. Right? Moshe was from Egypt, he was running for his life. Zipporah was the peasant girl that took him in. Moshe is now the leader of 3 million people. He just gave the Torah. He is the melech of Am Yisrael. He needs a wife that's royalty. We have to upgrade. He needs an upgrade. You know, we gotta upgrade his life a little bit.
iPhone.
Yeah, he needs an iPhone 8 or whatever it is. He needs an upgrade.
It's like a gawa, no?
What?
It's like a gawa.
Well, Moshe wasn't asking for it. Miriam was saying this to Aaron, that he needs an upgrade. He needs a wife appropriate for him. He needs a wife who's a princess. He needs a wife who's
Same quality.
same quality. Now, of course, Moshe was furious by this, because Moshe believed that Zipporah, who was loyal to him when he was a nobody, is the exact wife he should have now that he's somebody.
They told Moshe to do that.
Eventually, Moshe and Aaron, Miriam and Aaron came to Moshe. So Moshe was quite upset by all of this. So I mean, that's the Moshe Zekeni's approach. You know, the Shmuz talks about the fact that the Chofetz Chaim says, you know, we talk about, you know, what are you allowed to say when it comes to Shidduchim? How much are you allowed to say? So he says, the Chofetz Chaim says you can say things that you know, but you can't say things that you don't know. That means you can't go ahead and say things that you don't know. You know, you can't make things up. You can only say things that you know. I mean, I'll give you an example. I really don't want to talk about this on the tape. I have a case that I've been involved in where, I'll give you, you know, there's a family that they're fighting, whatever it is. So the brother, one of the members of the family is saying that my brother poisoned my father against me. Okay. How do you know this? How do you know this?
Assuming.
What?
Assuming. He's assuming, but it doesn't mean he's...
So now, how do you know this? He says, I have recordings of it. Recordings. I have a recording of it. You have a recording? How'd you get a recording? I planted a bug in the house. So I said to him, there was he wants to go to Bet Din, and the Bet Din says, no problem, we'll listen to the recording. I says, no, he's not going to Bet Din. He's not going to your Bet Din, because that's a felony. That's wiretapping. When you tape,
Illegal.
is illegal, 10 years in jail. 10 years in jail.
Without
And it's a federal offense.
Without
Permission.
DA permission.
Without permission, you need a warrant. That means if you and I are having a conversation, I can tape the conversation because I'm part of the conversation. But if you and him are having a conversation and I'm taping your conversation, see ya. Otisville, Leavenworth, federal offense. 10 years, minimum.
So between two people, one can record
tape.
another. But if it's
So you're telling me wiretapping? Good luck with that. This guy's not going to any bet. No bet that should listen to that. It's against the law. But you know what? If he doesn't go to bed, I'm going to get a seer against him. So you get a seer against him. Know what the seer says? You can go to court. Good luck. Go to court. Bring your tapes to the judge. Lie.
You mean you?
You mean it? Lie. You know. That's why it wasn't a very popular week this week. That was last week actually.
And he couldn't prove anything about it against his
No,
brother.
there was nothing to prove. And the father gave him whatever it was in his lifetime, and it's legal. And he issued a will, and he explained everything to the father, why he did it, and the way he did it. This guy's just jealous. He's just angry. He's just jealous. But you can't break the law. Because you see, for example, let me give you an example. Let's say I have some guy here, you know, what's his name? George. I don't want to George, that's good. Frank. Here's Frank. And I'm the police. And I wiretap his phones. I don't have a warrant. And he's on the phone, and he's saying, I just killed somebody, and I hid the gun in the sewer at the corner of Lefferts and Metropolitan. And the police go and they find the gun. And they check for fingerprints, and it's his fingerprints, and they arrest him. Will he go to jail? No. Why not? Because the wiretap was illegal. Everything you learn from the wiretap in law is called fruit of the poisonous tree. And it's all thrown out. So therefore, the statement is thrown out, the gun you found is thrown out, the fingerprints are thrown out, the ballistics are thrown out. When you break the law, everything you learn and do from that action,
He's a killer.
that's right, he's a killer. But if the killer goes free, it's not because the court let him go free. It's because the police broke the law also. And their sloppy detective work set him free.
So, which way is better to find the person if he's a killer?
And the answer is, it's a debate that will never get resolved. But the fruit of the poisonous tree throws all the evidence out. Now, if he was a terrorist and you tortured him to get the information, then you can get into the debate between Congress and the Democrats and the Republicans, and you know there's no end to the debate. But there are laws, and as a U.S. citizen, you are protected by the Constitution, called due process. Sometimes the laws protect you, and sometimes the laws protect the criminals. But it's the system. You need evidence, and to get the warrant, you have to have probable cause. I can't just get a warrant to tap your phones because I'm interested in what you're talking about.
You're a police officer or something that you're looking for.
I've got it, but I have to have a strong suspicion. I've got to convince a judge that I can violate your right to privacy, because your right to privacy is protected by the Constitution. Okay? Not so simple. Okay, one last question. Normally, if a person speaks Lashon Hara, what happens? The leprosy comes to the clothes. You don't get the message, it goes... No, first it goes to the house. You don't get the message, it goes to the clothes. You don't get the message, then it starts going up the scale. By Miriam, it went from 0 to full-blown in 30 seconds. No tent, no house, no clothes, no nothing.
Skin right away.
Skin right away and complete, covered from top to bottom. So the Rambam talks about this, and the Oznaim Torah talks about this. It says that Sheloksa Ba'azo, the Sifri writes, she got the worst leprosy in full dose. Like it didn't even go gradually. She got the worst in full dose. And the Rambam wants to know why. How could that happen? You know, she didn't speak because of jealousy. She didn't speak because of anger. She didn't do it publicly. I mean, what she and Aaron spoke about, you know, maybe on her level was considered, but was really nothing. So they all answer that in her case, it wasn't what she did. It's the fact that she spoke about Moshe. Had she spoken about her next door neighbor, probably nothing would have happened, or very little would have happened. But since Moshe was the leader of the Jewish people, and when you criticize the leader, you put the whole system into check. If Moshe is discredited, the Torah is discredited, the Talmud is discredited, everything goes out the window. So she got the full blast, not because of what she said, because of what she said about. She was talking about Moshe. Had she been talking about anybody else, it wouldn't have happened. So that's a very interesting answer. That means the Lashon Hara is bad. But if you speak Lashon Hara about the rabbi or the community leader or whatever it is, it becomes 100 times worse. Because now you just dismantle the trust, the public trust. And if you destroy the public trust, the whole community suffers. That was Miriam's mistake. Have a good night, everybody. To be continued.